So we'll have a series of talks. You asked me to talk about following in the Buddha's footsteps. So this is volume 4 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion. And you specifically asked that I talk about the topic of refuge, which is it's covered in the first 3 chapters of the book. If you have a chance to read the first 3 volumes of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, it would be good, because here we are jumping in the 4th volume with the topic of refuge. And you'll find it interesting that, uh, in the process of doing this book, we've changed the order a little bit of some of the Lamrim meditations because I found, that in teaching in the West, if you talk about precious human life and death and rebirth, right after that, people want to hear about karma. Yeah, they want to hear about, okay, tell me about cause and effect and how things operate in life. And so the topic of karma, which usually comes after refuge in the traditional Lamrim, we put in before refuge in volume 2. Okay. The reason it comes after refuge in the traditional Lamrim is they figure, that those teachings were given for people who were about to take a Vajrayana initiation. So those people were kind of already Buddhist. They knew about the Buddha Dharma Sangha. And after they heard about death and impermanence, then they wanted to take refuge, and learn how the 3 jewels can help them. But in the West, people they didn't grow up in Buddhist families. And so if you start talking about refuge too early and the qualities of the Buddha, people scratch their head and they say, I don't know about this. Okay? Because in the West, people want to really hear the teachings and the worldview and, uh, things that mm, sound rather impossible, like the Buddha's omniscience, something like that. People don't have that faith to accept it all at once. Yeah, they want to hear about something that they can really think about and accept. In preparing to talk about refuge and do it as a series of talks once a month, um, I initially thought, okay, I'll just look in the book and I'll pick out a few things here and there because it's usually when I teach here at the Abbey, I read everything and then I comment and I read and I comment. And I thought, no, we've got to go faster. But then when I started reading it, it was like, this stuff is so beautiful. Um, I think I need to read it and explain it and go slowly. And as far as we get, that's how far we get. Okay, we can always continue more in the future. Um, so I won't read everything, but there were just too many really juicy parts to leave out. So I'll start reading a little bit from the book, and then I'll stop every so often and make some comments. Okay. So the first section is about the entrance to the Buddhist path. So our ultimate goal is to become the 3 jewels ourselves. Think about that. Is that your ultimate goal? Is that why you're listening tonight? Or, yeah, what's your real reason for being here? Is it because you want to become the 3 jewels, or maybe you want to have learned some techniques for calming your mind or doing something with your anger. There could be a whole diversity of motivations for being here. But what we want to do is, no matter what motivation we start with, to cultivate the bodhicitta. And even if it's contrived, to try and have that ultimate goal of becoming the three jewels ourselves. To do this, we need to rely on the guidance of the three jewels that already exist. To actualize the Dharma jewel, which, as true cessation and true path, is the ultimate refuge in our own mind stream, we take refuge in the Buddha as the one who taught the Dharma, and the Sangha as the ones who have actualized some true cessations and true paths in their mind streams. So lots of times we talk about practicing the Dharma and hearing the Dharma talk. And when we use, there's many meanings of the word Dharma. And when we talk in that way, we're using the word Dharma to mean the teachings that describe the path. But when we talk about the Dharma jewel of the three jewels of refuge, that Dharma jewel is something that exists in the mind of a realized being. So it's the true cessations, the complete cutting off of the afflictions, chiefly ignorance and all the others, and the true path, the wisdom realizing emptiness that enables us to do that. So those two things, the true cessation and true path, which of the four truths that the Buddha taught, they're the last two truths. They are the Dharma jewel that we're taking refuge in. So very important to remember that. Taking refuge is not simply reciting, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha with our mouths. It involves an internal commitment to our spiritual practice that motivates us to humbly seek spiritual guidance. Okay, so there's something inside us who recognizes that recognizes that we need help. Okay, that we want to change. We cannot lead ourselves. And we need to have the aid of those like the Sangha and the Buddha. And here the Sangha refers to the Arya Sangha, and the Buddhas, the fully enlightened beings. We need them to teach us so that then we can actualize the true cessations and true paths, the real Dharma refuge in our own mind. Okay. And it says in here that motivates us to humbly seek spiritual guidance. That word humbly is important. Okay. Because sometimes we come into Buddhism just a little bit proud, cocky. Yeah. Oh, I've done many spiritual paths. I've had many spiritual experiences. So let's see what Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha have to say, and then I'll decide if I want to do it or not. Okay? That kind of attitude is not the right attitude. Okay? That kind of mind is not open and receptive. So the humility is what lowers our arrogance and makes us receptive to hearing the teachings. Okay. Based on his own experience, the Buddha taught a path in accord with reality. Okay, so the Buddha did not create samsara. He did not create nirvana. He did not create the path to awakening. He didn't create anything. So very different than the idea of a creator God. Rather, based on his own experience, the Buddha shared with us how he practiced in order to purify his mind and develop all the good qualities. Okay? So we're getting it, from somebody who's actually done the path and accomplished it. Okay, so this is very different than the latest um, uh, thing in the New Age newspaper. I'm assuming here that you're in Australia. It's a bit like America. And you have New Age newspapers where everybody advertises, the highest, best superlative teaching taught by the most erudite, highly realized teacher, and you should come now because otherwise you will miss the opportunity forever. And for you, if you enroll now, it's only $99.99, special deal. In fact, you can even join the teachings and have 2 weeks of free teachings and then enroll in our program. So do it now. This is not the Buddhist approach. Okay? Buddhism is not for sale. Yeah, the Buddha taught freely. And his joy, what he received in return, was, the material necessities to stay alive and the incredible satisfaction he felt when we actually paid attention to the teachings and tried to put them into practice. Okay. So he taught from his own experience. And he didn't take any drugs to have this experience. So again, I don't know in Australia, but maybe you can tell me. Here in the States, the latest fad, not only in New Age things, but actually in many Buddhist centers, is taking ayahuasca. It's some kind of plant that, they say makes you have a near-death experience and exposes you to incredible spiritual realizations. So many people are taking this. Is this popular in Australia? No?
Not that we know of, but...
Not that you know. Maybe you just don't know the right people.
This is true.
It's, because people often go to South America to take it with spiritual guides. And in indigenous cultures, this may be something that is quite important according to their spiritual tradition. But the way I look at it is, if ayahuasca or psilocybin or anything else, facilitated the path to awakening, the Buddha would have taken it. And he would have taught us to take it. But the fifth precept was no intoxicants. So what that means to me is the Buddha, he did not have the same enthusiasm that many people nowadays have for some shortcut method that who knows what it leads you to discover. But he's really teaching us something that will actually transform our mind, where we don't have to rely on, any kind of drug or plant, whatever. Okay. Through the Buddha's teachings and his living example, he demonstrated the ability to eliminate unrealistic and harmful mental states, such as ignorance, animosity, and attachment, from their root, and to develop good qualities limitlessly. All of this accords with the way things function, and by practicing the Buddha's instructions, we can verify the path to awakening and its resultant awakening through our own experience. So, this is a path that not only the Buddha discovered and described, but many people have practiced afterwards and attained the same result. And if we practice as the Buddha described, we can verify the path for ourselves. So it is not a path of blind belief. It's not a path of Buddha said so, so I believe, or my Lama said so, so I believe. If you've been watching any of His Holiness's online talks, he hasn't given any in the last few months, but last year he gave quite a few. Every single talk, His Holiness Dalai Lama said, we have to investigate the teachings. We have to use reasoning and logic and see if they make sense. We have to try them out to see if they work. And he said again and again, every teaching, it is not about blind belief. And he told us to question the Buddhist teachings and to question his own teachings and our other Lamas' teachings. Because by questioning, we first of all develop our own wisdom. And second, that is the way that we integrate the meaning of the Dharma into our own hearts. Just by having faith, that does not integrate the Dharma in our hearts. Yeah. But by really thinking about the teachings in terms of our life, then our mind and the Dharma come together. And that's when we really start to change. Some people read the biographies of the Buddha or the other Buddhist sages and, inspired by their sublime lives, follow their teachings. That is wonderful. But the most important reason for following the Buddha's teachings is that we have studied and investigated them and found them to be reliable and effective. Okay, so we put the energy in to study and practice, and then we verify for ourselves that the teachings work. In this way, we confirm for ourselves that the Buddha's philosophical teachings are the result of deep contemplation, sincere practice, and genuine meditation. They were not made up quickly to impress others. Yeah. Sometimes I really wonder about the things in the New Age newspaper. When did somebody make these up? Of course, they never say they made it up. They had an experience. But you know what? My experience is we can have lots of experiences that are not spiritual experiences, or that seem to be spiritual experiences, but really aren't. So that's why we need a reliable path, so we actually get where we want to go. The faith that arises from understanding the teachings is stable and reliable, whereas the faith that derives from admiration of the Buddha's life or amazement at his supernormal abilities can easily change. Yeah? So this kind of blind faith, it really doesn't It's not stable. And somebody else can come along, tell us something else, and if it sounds better, we'll go for it. Okay, ditch Buddhism, go for something. Let's go all take ayahuasca. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So, lots of people are very impressed with psychic powers and clairvoyance and supernormal abilities and things like that. And actually, in just after Losar in February, no, Tibetan Losar was in March, wasn't it? Yeah. So just last month, we had the Day of Miracles, and which is a very special day because the Buddha had was challenged to a competition with non-Buddhists about their miraculous powers, and the Buddha won the competition. So then when we hear, oh, that's the Day of Miracles, it's one of the special days in the Buddha's calendar. So maybe miracles, that's what we look at. Let's look for miracles, and that will make us have faith. Okay. I don't think that really works. First of all, I know for myself that if it were miracles that impressed me or miracles that I was seeking, there would be no reason to become a Buddhist. Because, if you look at Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, all the other religions, they all have miracles. And, if I think of that, it's like, oh, the Red Sea parting and the Israelites going through the Red Sea and then seeing the burning bush and God talking to them. I mean, that's quite a miracle. And, if I was looking for miracles to convince me, oh, I would have stuck with that and not come to Buddhism. But I was looking for something that made sense, that would actually help me. And the Dharma does that. It is said that taking refuge in the three jewels is the excellent door for entering the Buddha's doctrine. Okay? Refuge is the door to the Dharma. Renunciation of dukkha. When I use dukkha, that's the Pali and Sanskrit word that is often translated as suffering, but it actually means unsatisfactory conditions. Okay? So renunciation is of dukkha is the door for entering a path, and bodhicitta is the door for entering the Mahayana. Okay, so we have three doors there: the refuge, the excellent door for entering the Buddha's doctrine; renunciation of dukkha, the door for entering a path; and bodhicitta, the door to enter the Mahayana. Taking refuge establishes the spiritual direction we will take in life and leads us to learn and contemplate the Buddha's teachings. Through this, we will realize that no enduring happiness is to be found in cyclic existence, and we will renounce this miserable state and generate the aspiration to attain liberation. The stability of this understanding in our mind marks our entrance to a path. And then stable bodhicitta is the door to enter the bodhisattva path that leads to full awakening. Because it is only this altruistic intention to attain awakening for the benefit of all beings that will give us the strength of mind to fulfill the collections of wisdom and merit that are necessary to become a fully awakened Buddha. So there, His Holiness presented these three in an order. Now, if you studied with His Holiness for a while, you'll see that very often when he presents something in one order, then he'll immediately present it in the backwards order. So the causal order of how you start and get where you're going, and the backwards order of if you want to get here, this is the order of this is what you need to do first. So this is a trait that I've seen in His Holiness's teachings over the year that I think really helps us get the meaning of what he's talking about. So to review this sequence in the reverse order, to attain full awakening, bodhicitta is indispensable. Bodhicitta, that altruistic intention, is based on great compassion. But to feel great compassion for others, we must first have compassion for ourselves. Now, compassion for ourselves, love for ourselves, does not mean we indulge ourselves. I once gave a talk somewhere, and somebody came up to me afterwards and said, "You know, I am so tired of taking care of my family and taking care of others. I need some love for myself and compassion for myself. And so I'm going to go shopping and get some things I want, and then maybe I'll go on a nice vacation and relax." And that's what she saw as loving oneself. Okay. The Buddha has a very different idea about what having love and compassion for ourselves means. Okay. He says renunciation, renouncing the dukkha of samsara, wanting ourselves to be free from samsara and to attain nirvana, is the true meaning of self-compassion. Yeah? So if we really want ourselves to be happy, yeah, then we will aspire for liberation. We will give up clinging to the 8 worldly concerns and attachment to only the happiness of this life. Maybe we like the other version better. Go on a vacation to Hawaii. Yeah. But that's not what the Buddha told us. He said the real way of caring about yourself is to want yourself to be free of samsara. Because then you're really free. Then your happiness, your joy doesn't go down. It doesn't decay. So to reach this understanding of self-compassion and renunciation, we must be clear about our spiritual direction and the guides we rely on to lead us. Thus, taking refuge is the first step. It is the door to the Buddha's teachings. So it's the door to the Buddha's teachings, but it takes a lot of study and hearing teachings, contemplating them, meditating on them, so that we really have a correct idea of what refuge is, and then wanting to take refuge in our own hearts. It really requires some effort on our part to learn and contemplate all this so that we can enter the door to the Buddha Dharma. To take refuge properly, correctly identifying and gaining a clear understanding of the 3 jewels is crucial. To do that, understanding the 4 truths is important. Okay? People usually say the 4 noble truths, but a better translation is the 4 truths of the Aryas, four things that the Arya beings have seen as true. Okay. Without comprehending the two truths of conventional truth and ultimate truth, our understanding of the four truths will be hazy. And without understanding the four truths, our refuge in the three jewels will not be stable. So, look, right off the bat, many of you have probably been to His Holiness's public talks. When he teaches in the West, what does he start off with? The two truths and the four truths, the nature of the mind. He jumps in to some of the most difficult topics when he teaches in the West. And he does that because he says Westerners tend to be, educated, and they can think about these things. And so he teaches them right off the bat, even to people who aren't Buddhists. It's quite amazing when you do that. He doesn't start off with light and love and bliss, and with promises of great something, something, something. Again, for only $99.99, special deal for you. That's not how he starts out. He gives us like the essence, the most important topics that are not easy to understand. Because he knows that if we make effort in those, then when we take refuge, our refuge will really mean something. So he continues, we may wonder how we can take refuge without understanding profound and advanced topics, such as the two truths, the four truths of Aryas, emptiness and dependent arising. Okay? Because if the Dharma is the real refuge and it's two true paths and true cessations, then we need to understand all these advanced topics. He's saying, how can you do this? Conversely, we may wonder how we can understand such topics without having deep refuge in the three jewels. So which comes first? Yeah, the chicken or the egg? Understanding the advanced topics and that making us take refuge, or taking refuge which opens our mind to be receptive to hearing the teachings on the advanced topics? What is it? So he continues, by beginning with the topics of the true truths, the four truths, emptiness and dependent arising, as we did in approaching the Buddhist path, which is volume 1 of the Library of Wisdom and Compassion. Okay, by starting off with those topics, we gain an initial understanding that forms a good foundation for taking refuge in the three jewels. Based on taking refuge, we then learn, contemplate, and meditate on the Buddha's teachings and the understanding we gain that deepens our refuge. That deeper refuge will inspire us to learn, contemplate, and meditate more, bringing even deeper understanding. And so it goes with taking refuge and understanding the teachings, mutually aiding each other. Okay. So then the next section is reasons for taking refuge. Okay, so reasons for taking refuge in the three jewels. As with any produced phenomena, taking refuge occurs due to the coming together of its own causes and conditions. The first cause is being alarmed by the possibility of our misdeeds ripening in an in unfortunate rebirths in future lives. Okay, that's why we talked about karma earlier. This is the basic, most immediate reason that leads us to seek spiritual protection and guidance. As we progress and our understanding of the Buddhist teachings increases, we become alarmed at being subject to the various kinds of dukkha of cyclic existence in general and seek refuge from those too. Okay, so that's the first cause. The second cause is having faith and confidence in the ability of the three jewels to guide us from these dangers. So, such confidence is based on understanding the qualities and abilities of the three jewels and how they are able to guide and protect us from the danger of our negative actions created in the past and our afflictions that make us continue to plant the seeds of miserable rebirth in our own mind. Okay. So when we talk about faith in Buddhism, yeah, the Tibetan word is depa. And there's not a good English translation for it because when we think of faith, we often think of blind faith, just accepting something. And as I've been explaining, that's not what the Buddha is wanting us to have. So we may say the word faith, but what it means is confidence, trust. Okay, so we know something about the Buddha Dharma Sangha. We know something about the Dharma path. We know something about the qualities of the Aryas who have seen reality. And we have confidence in their ability to guide us to true paths and true cessations, which are what actually frees us from samsara. Okay, so there's trust, confidence. It's not just some kind of emotional faith. It's based on testing and then seeing that they are reliable. Those inclined to the Bodhisattva vehicle, which I hope is all of us, cultivate a third cause, great compassion for sentient beings and the wish to alleviate their dukkha. Since the main audience in this series is disciples with sharp faculties who aspire for Buddhahood. Gee, he's calling us disciples with sharp faculties. Imagine that. Okay. So if we're that, we must seek refuge with the aspiration to become a Buddha in order to have all the necessary qualities to most effectively benefit all sentient beings. Even if this bodhicitta motivation is fabricated at present, by continued cultivation, it will eventually become spontaneous. So if we reflect on bodhicitta again and again and again, and this is why at the beginning of every teaching, everything we do, the first thing you try and think about every morning when you wake up is bodhicitta. By this process of repetition, yeah, we plant the seeds of bodhicitta in our mind by doing the meditations, following the outlines, the long run outlines for generating bodhicitta, either by the 7-point cause and effect tradition or Shantideva's equalizing and exchanging self with others tradition. Yeah, by again and again practicing these, then they get imprinted in our mind. And one day they will be totally heartfelt. Yeah? But again, we have to put in the time and energy to do that. It's not going to come from praying. And this is another thing that His Holiness says all the time. You know, it's not just Buddha, 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 please give me realizations. Yeah. And while you're working so hard to give me realizations, I'm going to have a cup of tea. Okay. It's not that. So yes, I'm fully aware that so many of the prayers that we say, say, please bless me with this realization, as if Buddha is going to do all the work and his blessing, he's somehow going to give us a blessing and, oh, there it comes. There's that blessing, that realization. Bang! Now I have it. No. Yeah. There's this very famous quote that the Buddha, doesn't help us like, pouring water into a vessel. He doesn't, that's not how he gives us the realizations. And he doesn't remove our negativities like pulling a thorn out. Yeah. So even though some of the things we recite make it look like Buddha's doing the work, actually, it's a very strong psychological method for us. What it's really doing is us to get very clear in our own minds, in the presence of the holy beings, what our aspiration is, what we want to understand, what kind of person do we want to be, and then expressing that in words. And those are the words that were written by the great masters who have those realizations. So they're directing us, about the kinds of qualities and understandings that we want to gain so that our mind can become Buddha's mind. Okay, so in the first 3 volumes of this series, the first cause, alarm at the prospect of experiencing unfortunate rebirths and the dukkha of samsara. So that's been described in depth in the first 3 volumes. We will now look at the way the fundamental vehicle, that's referring to the path of the hearers and solitary realizers, in other words, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. Some people call it Hinayana. His Holiness does not call it Hinayana or lesser vehicle or something like that, because Hinayana is a very derogatory term, and our friends from the Pali tradition, the Theravada tradition, are offended by that. And, if we there's no reason for us to in any way put down a path that leads to liberation or put down the people who follow that path. Although in our tradition we say everybody will eventually become a Buddha, if there are people who seek to become an Arhat first, we respect that and we encourage them. Okay? So we don't use the term Hinayana. We say fundamental vehicle because that path is actually the first 2 scopes of the Lam Rim. And those 2 scopes, the initial and intermediate scope of the Lam Rim, are the fundamental path that we also have to follow before we can practice the Bodhisattva path. Okay. So we will now look at the way the fundamental vehicle, perfection vehicle, that's the Bodhisattva path, and Vajra vehicle, the Vajrayana. And by the way, the Vajrayana is a branch of the Mahayana, a branch of the perfection vehicle. It's not an entirely different vehicle. but we'll talk about how these vehicles delineate the three jewels, and then we will examine the qualities of the Buddha in particular and the reason the Buddha is an excellent guide. So the readers of this series are intelligent, and I am confident that by analyzing and contemplating the three jewels, you will come to well-formed conclusions. So he has some confidence in us. We have to make sure we're worthy of that confidence. Okay, now this next section is about the mind's potential and the existence of the three jewels. So I won't start reading that now because it's a little bit longer. We won't finish it soon. But the reason for speaking about the mind's potential is so that when we hear the qualities of the three jewels, and when we hear about the realizations that they have and the realizations that we are trying to gain ourselves, we will understand that attaining these realizations, generating these qualities, is actually possible. Okay? Yeah. And because sometimes when you hear the qualities, you hear just, oh, well, the Buddha is omniscient. He knows everything in the past, present, future. Then we go, how do I know that's true? Yeah. How do I know that's true? How do I know that that's not another conspiracy theory? I don't know. In the States, we are, I somehow, yeah, I'm assuming culture is the same, excuse me, but conspiracy theories is what is prominent in our media, our politics. It's people lying through their nose, making up all sorts of crazy things that other people actually believe. Okay. Do you have QAnon in Australia? People, yeah, okay. So you know what conspiracy theories are. So yeah, we need to know that it's, what the Buddha's teaching us is true. And it's not some kind of, conspiracy theory that he made up. Okay? So that's why we learn about what the mind's potential is, because then we gain some confidence that we too can gain those qualities. And then in the next section, I'm giving you a preview here. Okay, is this the section when he talks about it? Okay. Yeah, just to talk about how, that the three jewels actually exist. I know for myself when I first started learning about Buddhism, one of my biggest questions was, how do I know the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha exist? Yeah, how do I know? And what's really amazing is the Buddha, through reasoning and logic, actually will show us how the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha exist. I can't remember if it's in this next section or if it's a little further on, but it's an incredible explanation, actually, by Nagarjuna, and we'll get to it.